Keith. I really am thrilled to be here. Skip, as you mentioned, is a friend of mine. I was privileged to serve President Clinton as his deputy counsel. I was an assistant attorney general. My wife was instrumental in designing and helping to make sure this extraordinary library gets off the ground. And I just took a long walk down memory lane. So more emotional than you'd expect for a school's chancellor, I understand the circumstances I came here with. But I thought what Keith was saying about, we got these reading games and these math games in our graduation where he was going on. I was standing over there drinking my Diet Coke, and I was thinking so much of the 80th birthday of Winston Churchill. And Winston Churchill was in the mid-50s, was turned 80, and he had a big party for him in the Great Hall of State. And Anthony Eden, who was then British Prime Minister, gets up and he said, "What can I possibly say about Winston Churchill that we don't already know?" I mean, this is probably the greatest living person ever, certainly the greatest living man in the century. He said, "But there is one thing about Churchill that many of you may not know." And he looked in this Great Hall of State and said, "If we drew a line halfway around this room and filled it with brandy, it would reflect how much Sir Winston had consumed in his life." Winston Churchill, 80 years old, gets up, looks at the line, looks at the ceiling. So much to do, so little time. And I was thinking about that because I've been at this job. I'm not a career educator. I came to this job in a very unconventional way. I've been at it for almost 5 years. I've got 2.5 years more to do. My mayor's term limited. And I kept thinking, so much to do, so little more time in which to do it. What I'd like to do today is tell you something about what we're doing in New York, and I hope that maybe you find something useful about it. But I want to set the stage with 3 points. And if you remember nothing else, I do hope you remember these 3 points. I have a passion for education. I grew up in poverty in New York in public housing, and public educators in New York City, teachers changed my entire life. But the 3 points that I want to make today are first, that we have a crisis in this country, and I'm not melodramatic. We have a crisis in education that most people do not perceive because most people's kids are not directly affected by it. The second point is we can fix this crisis. We now have evidence to show that it doesn't need to be the way it is. And the third point is we're not going to fix it if we keep doing it the same old. There seems to be a belief afoot that either more money or more of this or more of that's going to solve this problem. And what I think we have is a dysfunctional delivery system, and I want to talk to you about that today. First, let me say something about the nature of the crisis. There are 2 achievement gaps in America, and they're negatively reinforcing, and they're going to create a serious problem. Not a problem for the wealthy or the powerful who will be able to navigate the system and get education for their kids. We're going to create a problem for this nation. The first achievement gap is a racial and ethnic achievement gap that is the shame of this, the greatest nation on earth. 53 years after Brown versus Board, 200 years after our creation, the average African-American Latino child is so far behind the average white child in America, it's almost hard to describe. In high school today, a 12th grade African-American, now many have already dropped out, 12th grade African-American students perform at the same level as a 9th grade white student. And that achievement gap has persisted. In my city, in New York City, we have a thing called the Regents Diploma. It's the only diploma that really means you're college ready. In New York City, 3/4 of my kids are African-American or Latino, and 1 in 4 earns a Regents Diploma. And that has gone up under our administration. That means 3 out of 4 are neither ready for college nor ready for independent living. And New York City is outperforming every large major city in the United States: Chicago, Los Angeles, Philadelphia, on and on and on. That achievement gap is troubling enough. But there's another one growing globally that is not only going to exacerbate that achievement gap, but it's going to have implications for the economy of this nation. I'd like to say it once was a moral issue. It's increasingly going to become an economic issue with painful moral overtones. And that achievement gap is that if you look at American math and science, or even in reading, and you compare her to the other industrialized nations, in the 8th grade and 12th grade, we're 24th out of 29. In one instance, we're 21 out of 29. Where else would America settle for being 24th out of 29 in the industrial countries? And that doesn't even count the growing and increasingly powerful threat that India and China are going to bring to the United States. You know, Bill Bradley is a friend of mine, just wrote a book. He said when he was a kid and he didn't eat his food, his mother would say, "Eat up, Bill, think about the kids in India and China." He said, now if you were a kid growing up, his mother would say, "Well, go do your homework, think about the kids in India and China." And that is going to have real implications for our country. And the second thing I think you need to know is it doesn't have to be that way. I've been in this for 5 years. A number of people who tell me it's the kids, it's their families, it's the lack of money, and every other imaginable excuse, rather than it's a school system that fails to do the work. For young children like that, who will be ready for us in a few years, the question is, will we be ready for them? But the amount of excuse out there is painstaking and enables the rest of us to feel good about the non-delivery of educational services to people who are not fortunate enough to be able to either figure out what the right school is or go to private school if necessary. I will take you to schools in my city and throughout this country, in which the very same kids that people tell you cannot be educated to a different level are indeed being educated to a different level. I'll give you one today, but there's lots of them, and I'd be pleased to tell you where they are. This one I studied when I took this job, because I needed to know what the potential was and how far we had to go. Little school up in New Haven. New Haven, Connecticut is a school, a city like most urban cities, predominantly African American, Latino, high poverty educational system, some high functioning schools, typically white kids. And this little school is called Homicide Academy, started by a whole bunch of Yale law students who started in a charter school. They take students in the 5th grade. This is very important because then you know what the level those students enter at. And between the 5th grade and the 8th grade, you can study what happens to those students and what happens in the New Haven system. Homicide Academy, every single student there is African American or Latino. Although in the last few years, this is a school you have to volunteer to go to. In the last few years, even in a predominantly African American Latino school, the quality of education is so high that white parents want to send their kids and are now increasingly fighting to get into that. But let me give you the data. Amistad, like Yale, like New Haven in the 5th grade, gets kids at about 30% proficiency in reading, writing, and mathematics. At the end of the 8th grade in New Haven generally, it's somewhere between 30 and 35% reading, writing, and math. At Amistad, the proficiency level of the kids who start at 30% is somewhere between 80 and 90% in reading, writing, and mathematics. So when people tell you it's the kids, those kids didn't get rich overnight, their families didn't get any more well-heeled overnight, and that school doesn't have any fount of resources that the rest of them have. When people tell you it's the families, it's the kids, and all the other things, know that those are people who are in the excuse-making business and don't want to own up to the challenges we face. And that takes me to my third point, which is if we keep doing it the way we've been doing it, we're going to keep getting the same results. You know, what amazes me is this is a system. We're now 53 years after Brown, we're almost 30 years after A Nation at Risk that President Reagan put out, and we have invested in the last 30 years in America in real dollars over twice as much money in education, and our results are largely flat. And the reason that is because we don't want to tackle with the real problems. Let me tell you a story, a true story. I've been on a job about a month. It's the kind of good news that happens to you when you take on a job like this. And there was a big story in the Daily News in New York City. What was the story? The story was we had a school in Washington Heights, not far from where Henry Kissinger went to school. And the school had a leaky roof and the gym floor below buckled. So the principal called the school facilities people and said, I need you to fix my roof and fix my floor. About 3 months later, the guy shows up and he says, I'm here to fix the floor. The principal said, no, first you gotta fix the roof. I mean, you can't fix the floor before you fix the roof, because it's just gonna leak again. And the guy said, look, I do floors. My supervisor sent me here to do floors today, and I'm gonna do the floor. And the principal gets on the phone, madly tries to navigate the bureaucracy, nobody comes, guy fixes the floor, starts leaking again, and the floor buckles again. And there it is in the newspaper, you know, what a bunch of idiots. They didn't know to fix the roof before you fix the floor. But you know, that's what we're doing in education. What we constantly are trying to do is fix the floor, but we got a leaky roof, folks. As long as you got a leaky roof, doesn't matter how many times you fix the floor, it's still going to leak on it. Now, what do I mean by that? We keep looking for program-based solutions. Program-based solutions, lower the class size, teacher certification, increase the time on task, all the other things, get the perfect curriculum. These things are important. Don't get me wrong. Just like the floor is important. Kids need a good floor to play basketball on. But the roof is leaking. And that's the reason we're not going to get the results we need. Now, what do I mean that the roof is leaking? And fundamentally what I mean by that is the incentives in the organization, the things that are rewarded, the things that are tolerated, the incentives are wholly misaligned. And as long as incentives are misaligned in the system, you're not going to get the result. You want to know the real facts. Now, I've been doing this for a while. The real fact is, when people tell you, for example, that a lot of teachers leave teaching early on, there's a high attrition rate, that this and that and this and that. The fact of the matter is, you got to look at the school. First thing I did when I became chancellor, I said, I'm not looking for a good school system. I'm looking for a system made up of good schools. Because a good school system is about the adults, it's about the politicians. But a school is the only place a parent gets to send her kid to go. And in New York City, I got some of the greatest schools in the world. I got some of the best schools in the world in New York City. And I got some schools that no person who had a choice would send their kid to in the same city. So if you don't start talking about the school, you're not talking about what's going on. And if you want to know what the real crisis in public education in this country is, the real crisis is some schools have wonderful, highly stable faculties that can support each other, mentor each other, teach new people how to move forward. And those schools work well. And there are other schools that have highly unstable faculties. And in my city, some schools for one vacancy will have 100 applicants, and other schools, each year we send them 20 or 30 new teachers. And I know those teachers, they're young and they're good and they care deeply, but they tell me literally, they feel like they're drowning because the school doesn't have enough senior teachers who can support them, mentor them, and teach them. So if you want to know why we have a crisis in public education, the most important thing in a child's education is the quality of that child's teachers. And teaching talent in America is not rationally or equitably distributed. 53 years after Brown, when Brown promised every kid equal educational opportunity, the most important thing in a kid's education, the quality of teaching, is not equitably distributed. And if we don't address that, we are not going to resolve the problem. Now, how do we address that? We've got to change two things, and they're very hard to change. This is about organizational theory and organizational evolution. This is about the leaky roof. The first thing we need to change is stop talking about inputs and start talking about outputs. We've got to move the system in the direction of focusing on outputs. Every place I go, they say, Chandler, how much you spend on art? How much you spend on music? How much you spend on math? The question they got to ask me is, what do I get for what do I spend on math? What do I get for what do I spend on music? I look at schools all the time that spend the same dollars and get entirely different results with the very same kids. Kids who start at the same level. That's what's so powerful about Amistad, Academy, CHIP, and some of the others that are getting those results. And the second thing we've got to understand is we have got to stop treating teachers as if they were non-differentiating mass. We have got to reward the great ones, we've got to challenge the great ones to take on the highest tasks, and those who are not qualified to teach should not be given life tenure and be allowed to float through the system. When we change social promotion in our city, we say we're no longer going to promote kids who are young to the next grade and hope they'll figure out how to learn. We're going to really prepare those kids, and if necessary, we'll hold them back. I went to lots and lots of churches, and I never forget what parents used to say to me. They used to say, Chancellor, it's okay for you to hold my kid back this year. The only thing I ask you is give him a real teacher this time around. Now, don't get me wrong. Most of the teachers in my city, most of the teachers in America are extraordinary people, and they deserve to be supported. They deserve to be well compensated. Under this mayor of New York, we've raised teachers' wages by 43%. But so long as you don't differentiate, so long as the only key variable in how we reward teachers is seniority, so that staying there is the way they get their raises, rather than changing the outcomes for kids, then we're going to continue to have a leaky roof and a dysfunctional school system. So everything that we try to do in New York, from the day the mayor got elected and when he got mayoral control, meaning he phased out our school board and he took over and asked me if I would be his chancellor, is we're trying to build a system on the backbone of real accountability. And I mean that the adults in the system are accountable for the results of the students. And we're trying to then differentiate so that we can create the right set of incentives. And let me just walk you through. We had a first-term strategy and a second-term strategy. First-term strategy, first thing we did, I raised $70 million of private money to create a leadership training program. And I will tell you, it's the best money I ever spent. Remember what I said to you before, schools work one at a time. I never met a parent send their kid to a school system or a school district. It don't work that way, right? Schools work one at a time. You ask any teacher, you ask anybody, without a great leader, school's not going to work. And so we have invested over the years. Each year now I train up about 70 principals. I make a 14-month investment in them, and it is grueling. We start with 90 and only 70 make it through. We call it Principal Boot Camp. And it's not a lot of theory stuff. You don't spend a lot of time with the books. You spend a lot of time with my high-needs kids in some of the high-poverty, toughest neighborhoods in the city. And those people, in return for what's a $150,000 investment that we make in them, they go on and take jobs in our highest needs communities and schools. And we've now placed close to 200 of them in the last several years. Second thing we did is depoliticize the system. We had 47 school districts. The only thing they had in common is that they were political fiefdoms. They were places where people got hired. They were places where there were one or two good schools to make sure the right people got their kids into those schools, and the rest of the schools were fundamentally dysfunctional. And we rolled it up into a large regional structure that we manage, just like anyone would try to manage a dysfunctional business. And we decided that we had to bring coherence, we had to develop capacity, and we had to bring in some choice and competition into the system. In the first term, we did all of that. It was tough because it was very top-down. Teachers and others don't like top-down. But we fundamentally had to get this thing lifted off the ground, and we did it. We went to a common curriculum in English and math. We put math and English coaches in every single school. For every 10 schools, I had a local instructional superintendent whose job it was to make sure that those schools were moving forward on the curriculum that we put in place. And during that period of time, we opened up 200 new middle and high schools. 200, that's probably more schools than most cities have altogether. And we made them choice schools. Indeed, we made our entire high school system choice. Why did we do that? Because I wanted to say to some schools, you know what? If nobody wants to go, it's a pretty powerful message that nobody should go. If you're going to get the same 1,000 students each year, come hell or high water, then your incentive is going to be entirely different. And so we broke up some of these massive schools and replaced them with new small theme schools. And of all people, this is a small irony, when I was in the Justice Department, and what was not so smart a career move, I had sued Microsoft. But Bill Gates has given us well over $100 million in order to build these new small schools, working with him. And we have created opportunity. In New York City now, every single kid lists his or her high school choices. We've got about 350, 400 high schools, and over 80% of our kids gets one of their top 8 or 9 choices in going to high school now. And that's because we created choice. We've shut down probably 10 or 12 large high schools, and it's a root canal to shut down a high school, I'll tell you right now. Without anesthesia, it's a root canal to do it. But we have done that because I take the view that being there doesn't entitle you to continue to be there. Student performance and outcomes. So that is the system that we built in the first 4 years under this mayor, 3.5 years. And as Keith said, by every metric, we have succeeded. We haven't succeeded remotely as enough as we should have. Just last month, the commissioner of our state said that our city had gone up 6 points in graduation from 44 to 50, while the rest of the state had gone down 2 points. Now, if we can go up 3 points a year like that, in the next 5, 7, 10 years, we can actually have a respectable graduation rate. For 3 years in a row, there's something called the Broad Prize. And the Broad Prize is the top 100 urban school districts are evaluated on the numbers. And out of the top 100, they picked 5 as the 5 finalists. For the last 3 years, we've been one of the 5 finalists. So far, we haven't won it, but we got our fingers crossed for this year. And again, one of the 5 finalists. But with all of that said, a 50% graduation rate is abysmal. And I did a study. Today in New York City, listen to this, 140,000 kids between the ages of 16 and 21. I want to say that again, 140,000 kids. That's a lot of kids. Have already dropped out or are on their way to dropping out. If I were to make that a high school district, those 140,000 kids, it would be the 3rd largest high school district in America. In my city, they've already dropped out or on their way to dropping out. So despite our success, we have got to move to a different set of organizational incentives and rewards. First thing we did is build the most sophisticated accountability system. It has dimensions that turn on the numbers and testing, dimensions that turn on an independent evaluation, and dimensions that turn on a survey of parents, students, and teachers. And all of that information we provide to the entire city. And we're doing something, my friend Tony's nuts, we're going to give every school a grade, A, B, C, D, or F. We're not going to hide anything here. And the principal part of that grade is to compare schools that have similar students starting at the same level. It doesn't tell you a lot about a school if it starts with all the high-performing kids. That tells you a lot about the kids. What tells you about a school is no matter where its kids start, how far does it move each year? That's what we measure. We call it a growth model or a value-added model. And what we're looking at is 2 schools, and we put them in cohorts that have fundamentally the same kids. Some schools got a lot of special ed kids. In my city, some schools got a lot of English language learners. And some schools have a lot of kids who start way down and academically challenged. Other schools start with a lot of high-performing kids. You know what you find? Even among the high-performing kids, some schools move them forward and others are stagnant. And among the low-performing, some of them are moving forward. So what's interesting is, in my city, some schools that everybody thinks are just great. Those schools are not so high, and they may not get an A. They may get a B or a C. And other schools that people don't think are so high, those schools may get an A because they're making incredible progress with the most challenging kids. And everything we're doing is built off this accountability system. And what we said to principals in our system, remember I told you about the importance of principals, what we said to principals was, here's the deal. We're going to give you much greater authority over your school. In my city, the principal is the CEO of the school. He or she is a school leader. I'm going to give you a lot more resources, and I've now cut over $400 million from the bureaucracy and sent it to the schools. I'm going to give you much more control over that. And you decide, you, your teachers, your staff, decide what's the best way for you to solve a tough problem. But in return for that, I am going to hold you accountable. In New York City now, every principal has to sign a contract with the city. We call it a performance plan. And what it says is, if your school is rated D or F 2 years in a row, we get to fire you. And if it's rated A or B, you can get all sorts of bonuses. We negotiated a contract, and listen to this, you never heard of things like this before. We negotiated a contract with our union, and it says the following. The base salary for principals in New York City is more expensive than Little Rock, Arkansas. So it's between about $120 and $150. But you can get another $25,000 a year if I think you're good enough, and you'll go take on one of my high-need schools in one of my low-income communities. You got to make me a 3-year commitment, and I'll pay you $25,000 a year. And then, if your school is an A school or a B school, you can get up to another $25,000. Principals in New York City can get paid $200,000 a year. I was testifying about this in Congress yesterday. Can't tell you the number of congressmen came up and asked if they could become principals in my school system. Well, you see, that's how it should be. See, that's how it should be. If somebody can turn around a school, can turn around the lives of kids. And you know what we did instead of the bureaucracy? We created something again, unheard of. What I created is 14 different models for schools to partner, and they choose, instead of having this top-down bureaucracy. So the first thing we had is an empowerment school. And basically, these empowerment schools, I give them another $175,000, and we form them in groups of 20. But they choose their group leader, they choose the schools they want to affiliate with, and they have far greater authority over their budgets and their programs. Then I took the 4 people I thought were the best inside the system, and I had them create learning support organizations. And they then devised a support organization tailored to what they thought the needs are, instead of a one-size-fits-all. And then I partnered with nine different outside organizations, 2 universities, some community groups. All of these people are now, we're in the process of it as we speak, are out there trying to get business from the schools. They charge somewhere between $30,000 up to about $120,000. And then we've had fairs and meetings so that they can say to the schools, these are the services we can provide. And yes, it does make sense to bring market-based incentives into a school system like ours, because the principals for the first time can tailor this bureaucratic investment to what they think is necessary. And increasingly in New York, we're going to move the system on its principles. The toughest negotiation we had, and it was tough, and it was not fun, was with our teachers union over the issue of involuntary transfer. We used to have 3,000 teachers a year move through the system. They were excess, or they take a seniority transfer, and they move through the system and go from one school to another. Neither the principal, the teachers, or the parents at any of the other school had anything to say. They just show up. And we eliminated that practice. Because to me, what you want to do is create a workforce of people who come together voluntarily. And I want to look the principal in the eye and say, I'm holding you accountable. You now can control whom you hire, what the conditions are. And just this week, it's in the New York Times, we went to something called fair student funding. Instead of funding schools, we fund students in New York City. And we do it totally transparently. And so what we say is, if a kid is poor, it costs this much more to educate that child. If there's a kid is special ed, this much more. English language learner, that much more, etc., etc. But it's all the same. And the money follows the child. Remember I told you about how we have more and more choice in the system. As a result of that, some schools that were systematically underfunded are now getting up to $400,000 more this year, and they'll get another $400,000 or $500,000 more next year. The schools that were in the past overfunded, we've held harmless. But what you're seeing for the first time is a series of principles, management principles, market principles, competition, and choice. It's going to take a while, a long while, before we get where we want to go. But I submit to you, it requires a leader like the mayor of the city, Michael Bloomberg, to get this kind of work done. I want you to think about the following. The first thing he did when he became mayor was to say he wanted to get control of the schools. Now that is not a politically wise move. There's not a large, complex urban school district in America, not a large, complex urban school district in America you can point to and say, that's the model. And he knew he'd have to run 3.5 years later for re-election. What he decided was it was more important to get started on tackling the most serious issue we face as a nation. And believe me, I worked in the White House, I know the State House, and I know city government. The most serious domestic issue, and maybe the most serious issue we face, is this increasing set of achievement gaps. And this mayor knew that politics as usual was not going to fix it, that it would take leadership, and it would take someone willing to take on the tough fights. And make no mistake about it, if you're not willing to take on the tough fights, if you think this is going to all be kumbaya moments, it ain't going to happen. It ain't going to happen. People say to me, why are you fighting? And I tell them, the reason I am fighting is because when I grew up, my father said, if you don't want to live in public housing when you grow up, you make sure you get a good education. And if it weren't for teachers in Astoria, in New York City, I could be living in public housing today. How wrong it is that we allow so many of our kids not to receive the education they need. And I want to end on a line that I use to guide all of my efforts in New York. From the day I took this job, people said, Chancellor, we're never going to fix education until we fix poverty. And I tell those people, you've got it exactly backwards. We're never going to fix poverty in America until we fix education. Thank you for the opportunity to visit with you here today. pretty hot yourself.
I just want to come to New York and hang out with you. We have spent the last 5 years in Arkansas really reforming our schools, and we've done some great things, and we've done the funding piece that you were just talking about, the funding outfalls and students. But one of the things that we haven't gotten to yet that you've gotten there, and I'm just trying to figure out how you do it. And that is this piece that with the teachers. I mean, the teachers will tell you, the teachers union will tell you, not so much the union here in the state, because we work really well with the AEA here in Arkansas, I believe. But teachers will say, oh, I think so. But the teachers will say, we're not paid enough. You know, we're not respected enough, we're not paid enough. And so you've got this big accountability piece now going on, created by No Child Left Behind and all the state stuff. But when you say, okay, we're willing to pay you more, but it's going to be an accountability-based pay, they don't want that. So, I mean, it's kind of like you're at gridlock, because taxpayers are not going to agree to pay teachers more money until teachers agree that they're going to be accountable for what's going on inside the classroom, because you don't want these children that are in the 5th grade that are reading at 2nd grade level, or worse than that, graduating from high school that are reading at 5th grade level. And so you want that accountability measure in place. How did you get there? I mean, give us some...
It's tough, but let me say a couple things. For one way we got there is because our mayor didn't blink. And this is tough stuff, but he was willing to say that at some point, we're prepared not to sign a contract. Now, I'd be the first to say that, it's funny, if you ask me, they want a teacher, you get $2,000 pay raise until you get to retirement. Now, that's irrational. And it's, as you say, the taxpayers aren't going to pay for it. I think there are some great teachers who are woefully underpaid. And forgive me if I say this, I think there are some teachers who are overpaid because they're not very good. And in every other profession, people acknowledge the differences. But for some reason, we still have an industrial-based union model that has to change. So the first thing we changed, I created a position called lead teacher. And frankly, our union has been, I think, reasonably progressive on this. We created, so now I can give 2 teachers $100,000 more to get them to go to a high needs school, $10,000 a year. So, and they go in pairs so they can build capacity. So right now we have over 200 teachers doing that. And the next thing I did, I'm short math and science teachers. Why am I short math and science teachers? Because you can't get enough math and science teachers at the price that you can get English and phys ed. So my English and my physical education teacher said, well, you don't respect us. I said, what are you talking about? I said, look, I'm the management. If I can get as many science teachers for the same price I can get the others, I'm happy to do it. But I can't get them. I said, so I got to pay them more. Every university in America, every university pays a science teacher more. It's just a function of supply and demand. So I tell them this. And then I work with my union now for math and science and special ed teachers. I pay them a $15,000 signing bonus if they're highly qualified. And we'll go to a high needs community. And so we're starting to differentiate. Then with the principals union, it took me, this is little too, it took me 4 years to get a contract. 4 years to get a contract. But when we got it, it had some key principles in it, including this $50,000. Well, because what always strikes me is the reason people are not respected in no small measure is because most people perceive that public education is not working. And if we would create a positive feedback loop, then the respect will go up dramatically. And to some extent, the way you do that is using rational incentives. Bill Bradley, in his book, said, one of the reasons he worked so hard when he played for the Knicks was he knew if the Knicks won, and he was perceived as the guy who carried it, he was going to get a whole lot more money. Now, Bill Bradley is almost like a preacher boy, but he understood that monetary incentives work. And as long as you have a system in which he says people get paid for showing up, a lot of people just show up. And I have a good friend who started, first-year teacher, no politics, and I asked her, I said, what do you think about teaching? She said, I love it. I just love it. I said, any problems? She said, yeah, I just got one problem. She said, why do you get paid the same? Whether you work hard or you don't work hard, or whether you do it or you're not good. And as long as we keep asking that question, we're going to keep getting results we're getting. Now, yesterday when I was in Congress, I was testifying. The federal government ought to put all of its education money toward supporting pay based on accountability and performance and differentials in various communities. Because see, when I'm short math and science teachers, the kids in my middle class communities got plenty of math and science teachers. It's the kids in my high poverty communities that don't get math and science. Now think about this, right? Here's a kid, his family's in poverty, it may be highly dysfunctional, and he's trying to get an education. And a person who's teaching him science doesn't know science. And you can't make this up. I mean, you can't learn. And if you're in the 6th grade, I taught 6th grade math a long time ago for a short time, so I'm not trying to pass myself off as a teacher, although I was a law teacher. But I taught 6th grade math. You can't do this thing a day ahead of the kids. And so when I'm short, the kids who are really getting killed by this are kids in high needs communities. And as a result of that, legitimately, they're falling further and further behind. I'm not a fool about how hard it is to educate kids who come to schools without the advantages. But I am telling you, it's entirely doable. But it ain't going to be done if we don't give them a good, high-quality teacher. I mean, that's all the data proves that.
The understanding that it is a process, and understanding that we've got to make hard decisions. How do you get the community and the governance structure to rally around that and to really make the hard decisions?
Yeah, it's a great question. Now, I'll tell you, this is a great question, and I think about this all the time, because here's the problem with education. If you have a crisis with your police department, everybody gets agitated. Because there's a lot of crime, it affects everybody, right? In fact, the wealthy can be more affected. Education is different than bad. When about 23 years ago, this next week, I went down to Dallas, Texas, and I adopted a daughter. She was 4 days old. Right? So I'm on this plane thinking about, what will she look like, what it is, will she be smart, all the anxieties, because I have no clue, right? The only thing I thought was good news is since she didn't have my genes, she would be bald. But other than that, I thought, what's she going to be like? So I could not, really I calmed myself down. I said, whatever happens to this kid, I'm going to get her a good education, right? So education is not like crime. It doesn't impact all of us the same way. So it's very hard. I tell you how I can radicalize everyone. I made this speech, people get very nervous. I said, suppose the law required every one of you to send your kids to public schools in New York, and I had to randomly assign you to my public schools. If that happened, this would end. That people would never tolerate if I had to randomly assign them, because anybody who knows how to navigate the system knows one of the things. You move to the right community, if necessary, you move to New Jersey in the suburbs, here, there, whatever. So this makes this a particularly difficult challenge. Now, to me, how you do this is it can't be done without leadership, and it's got to be tough leadership. There's got to be something more important than the re-election of a politician. And it's got to be a willingness to take on the tough fights. And I give my mayor enormous credit, because I'm telling you, people around him are saying, don't do this, we don't need this fight, et cetera, et cetera. And he says, look, and every meeting I go to him, he said, have you closed the achievement gap? I said, just so much I could do between last week and this week, Mike. He said, keep working on it. And he's very focused on it. Second thing I think you need to do is the kind of thing I'm trying to do here, is you've got to convince people that the future of this country depends on a willingness for the community, even those of us whose kids are going to do just fine, to come together and make the tough choices. It's going to be painful. If it weren't painful, it would be done already. But people have got to be prepared to come together. And I spent a tremendous amount of time. It's a funny story, but it's a true story. I spent a tremendous amount of time in churches, African-American Latino churches on Sunday morning, talking to people, because they don't know me. They think I'm some kind of businessman. I always start with a story, true story. I tried a case in Tyler, Texas, not very far from here, East Texas. And there was a man sitting in the back. And this was in 1989. And after a 3-week trial, I finished my closing argument. And I went up to him, and he went up to me and he said, Mr. Klein, can I have a word? I said, sure. I said, I just want to say one thing. Anytime you're tired of being a Yankee Jewish lawyer, you come here to be a Southern Baptist preacher. And you know what? That's what I'm doing. That's what I'm doing. I'm going, no, that's what he said to me, and that's what I'm doing. So I'm going to churches, and I'm talking to people. I go on Africa on Black radio all the time. And, because you've got to, first of all, you've got to build trust, and that's And second of all, you've got to light a fire. And the message I have is not an easy message. People, when you talk about organizational theory, when you talk about incentives, when you talk about differentiated pay, these are tough things to be able to make this up. But the question is, how badly do you want them? I mean, we went through a civil rights movement, and if you want to see it, just go across the street and watch that movie that Skip showed you. Bring tears to your eyes every time you hear one of the King's Island June speech. But here it is, 53 years after Brown versus Board of Education, and we're not serious.
I think I better give you a disclaimer. I'm the National Education Association Director for Arkansas and also the incoming president of Little Rock Classroom Teachers. So at the moment, my life's insane. My question to you is something that kind of directly impacts what's going on here, but also nationally. One of the reasons from what I hear from my colleagues, is that we do not feel like we are valued. As if all of a sudden, you talked about great teachers you had, other people will talk about great teachers they had, but our input is not valued. Instead of having us buy in and have a conversation, people want to dictate. And we're the ones who are in the classrooms. And it's really difficult from our perspective to listen to people who have not walked the walk or talked the talk and tell us what they think that we need to do. And they don't give us time to tell them what it is we are doing and what will or won't work. So I guess my question is, you said that the hardest part you have is with the principals union. We don't have that problem here. But we do, of course, my professional organization gets beat up daily in the newspaper here among other people who attack us frequently. But they don't listen to us. So what did you do to get the teachers to agree to those changes in their contract that would allow you to move forward?
Well, it was tough. First of all, I don't think there's any question that everyone respects teachers. I think that's not the point. The question is, when you ask a teacher, they'll tell you, teacher's a teacher's a teacher. I've talked to Reg about this. I mean, he and I last week, Reg Weaver, Joel.
Reg will be here next week.
Reg Weaver, Joel Klein, and Angela Jolie. And you talk about the odd couple, that was it. So we were together at Tribeca, and I saw him a couple of nights ago. A teacher takes you, a teacher's a teacher, and that seniority should decide pay. Now, when I talk to teachers, and I say to them, do you think a principal's a principal's a principal? I say, are you kidding me? Now, every principal was once a teacher. Now, when they were a teacher, they were a teacher, they were a teacher, they were a teacher, but when they're a principal, they're not a principal, principal, principal. In any human endeavor, particularly one that is as challenging as teaching, people are differentiated in their skills. And we should reward that. And not just say that if we're here to, teachers come up to me and say, Chancellor, I've been here 20 years. I said, what do you want me to conclude from that? I've known lawyers who practiced law for 20 years, I wouldn't let them handle traffic. No, I mean that. I don't mean to be disrespectful, see, but I think that hurts when the NEA doesn't say that the greatest teachers in our system, and we can argue about the right way to evaluate it, but I appeared in Congress with 2 teachers the other day, and yesterday, and we were talking about, you could talk about peer review evaluations, you could talk about group incentives, but it strikes me as implausible that in 80,000 teachers in my city, that each of them is equally qualified, or that those who are there the longest are ipso facto the best. So how do I convince people of this? I'll be candid with you. I haven't convinced many people of it, but I'll tell you what, the people who I've said to, you become a lead teacher, you pay an additional $10,000, if you go to Harlem, if you go to South Bronx, if you go to Central Brooklyn, those people are excited about it. And a lot of the new people who begin to see the opportunities in the system, see that they can now don't have to wait 25 years in order to get the opportunities and dollars and so forth. I testified with a teacher yesterday who said, because she was the junior teacher, she just got the worst classroom, the worst labs, and all the other things. So I hope, and I think teachers union play an important role in American education, but I hope that they understand that a pay system that differentiates fundamentally on seniority and a few credits isn't going to work. Yeah, I'm going to let you have the last word, because this is going on a long time.
I chose to go through national board, and I was successful the first time. And when I did, what happened is principals across the district came and said, oh, come to my school, oh, come to my school. And my school is the highest poverty school. I use my teacher voice. The highest poverty school in Little Rock School
And too much of our experience has been that. I completely concur that we have teachers who are not as strong as they should be. There are also doctors who are not as strong as they should be. I don't want to go to one of those. But part of it I would say is that I said something to a principal a couple of weeks ago, and they said it takes too much time. Well, I thought the principal's primary job was to be the leader in the building of education. And if you're the leader, shouldn't you be in the classrooms ensuring the quality of delivery?
Absolutely.
And why are the principals, I hope that the principals are held accountable in your district, because this is a big problem. I could sit down and explain to people what you do, but they tell me it's too much time. What's too much time to do what's best for children? That's my question to them.
I agree with you, but I see a lot of teachers who, after 6 hours and 50 minutes, they say it's too much time. I think you've got to be fair about this. There are incredible heroes in this system. And principals in my city, I told you, they sign a performance agreement. They sign, and they agree. They're not going to be happy, but they agree. If their school doesn't move forward, I'm going to terminate them. I've terminated probably in the last several years 50, 60 principals, and I'll terminate more than that going forward. But I think, I wrote this once, so let me say, if you pay me the same amount of money, and I'm really a terrific teacher, right? And I have a choice to go to a school in which the kids are very well behaved, they come to school with all the advantages in life, and they're academically gifted, or go to a school that has all sorts of classroom management issues, not a lot of parental involvement, and all the other things. For the same amount of money, save the Mother Teresa's in the world, and God bless those people, they're still out there. But save those. By and large, people are going to choose the easier pathway. And we've got to address that, because a maldistribution of teaching talent, which you must see from your position, is really a tragedy. So for me, that's what it's all about. It's contrary to what a lot of people say. It's not that I'm knocking teachers. I actually think teachers are the most important thing other than kids' parents in changing your kids' opportunities in life. And what I'm trying to do is make sure we get the good ones in all the buildings. Go ahead, Skip.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions, and we're going to break here a bit so that everybody can have time to visit with Joel personally. You can just see that, and let me paraphrase a quote. Joel, I think one of the reasons that you are, have been, and will continue to be successful is that you do a great job of communicating with both the grass tops and the grassroots. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for welcoming Joel Klein and